Welcome back to Politics Tonight, everyone. Thank you so much for staying with us tonight to discussing the aspiration of Brigadier General Olamide Felix Ohunyeye, retired, is vying to become the next governor of Ondo State. Brigadier, thank you so much for staying with us. Now, as an economist, what is your blueprint to increase the internally generated revenue of Ondo State?
Well, currently, Ondo State generates about 3 billion, monthly. And we need to put it on record so that when the previous governor, the late governor, came on board, the state was generating about 600 million monthly, and that has increased to 3 billion. But as good as this figure is, when viewed against the backdrop of what other states like Lagos and Kano with rivers are generating, there's still a lot of room for improvement. For example, Lagos currently generated about 60 billion monthly, and between Kano and rivers, they generate not between 10 to 15 billion on a monthly basis. So what do I do, or what do we do, what do we do now to improve on this revenue? Now, basically, we will take a look at the current revenue structures. I want to see how the Ondo State Revenue Service is currently doing their job, and see the content, the IT content in their revenue generation. We want to see the synergy between the state revenue services and the local government revenue services. How are they collecting revenue? Are there dichotomies? Are there overlaps? And this is very important and germane because revenue is good for the state, but the people must not be turned to beast of burden. We want to collect as much money as possible, but the yoke and the burden must not be too heavy on the state. So the revenue collected must be commensurate with the income. The pay-as-you-earn is a straightforward, a straightjacket equation. Beyond the current procedure of generating revenue, I think the important thing to discuss is how to generate additional revenue for the state outside the current revenue tax net.
Yes,
now, what do I mean?
Yeah.
What do I mean? The state is endowed with enormous, resources, and currently we are not getting practically meaningful revenue from them. Take, for example, we had the Oluwa Glass, which was the sole glass factory, and foremost in Africa, in Ibokoda. And the uniqueness about this factory is that the raw material, the silicon sand, is about 85% of the raw materials. But the factory packed up, discontinued operations. That same thing goes to the Ohunyeye Palm Company that was processing oil palm for both local and foreign consumption. And these are major revenue drivers for the state. That company has always packed up. And the list of moribund companies in Ondo State they are endless. So what we have to do, if we want to become Lagos State in terms of revenue generation, is to see how we have to come up with strategies, to rebuild these factories. Why? Because the raw material source is still on the ground. And so what we are missing is the gamut of the processing capabilities. Now you argue with me that Ondo State does not have the money, to build new industries. Yes, but we have the resources, and we have the intellect and the capacity, the potentials to seek strategic partnership, with investors, foreign direct investment, angel investors, or whatever mode of investment through private partnership to come to Ondo State with their money to establish these companies. And don't forget, Ondo State is bounded in the south by the Atlantic Ocean that boasts of enormous aquatic resources. And you can imagine, you are talking about 200 nautical miles within the exclusive economic zone, that there are various types of fishes that Ondo State is not getting money from fishing. So what has happened? We have had the preponderance of illegal and unregulated fishermen, from the whole world, moving around Ondo State, making the money, creating security problems, and the state is deprived. And as a matter of fact, even within that southern zone, the depth of the Atlantic Ocean there, is the highest. They will have the highest depth, and that depth is most suited for, a deep sea port. So if Lagos is having a deep sea port currently, then of course building another deep sea port in Ondo, will be another advantage, especially within the belt of Ibokoda to Ibekebo. The depth there is much, and we can actually have the biggest ship that will bat, in those localities, that will reduce, the cost of hauling with small ships, So the meaning of all this narrative, this argument I'm telling you is that there are very huge potential for generating big money, big monthly, resource for the state, if we embark on all these projects. And like I said, we may not have the money, but we have the brain, we have the intellect, to forge very compact, strategic communication and partnership that will bring in the right investments. And other than making money from all this investment, we have a lot of other derivatives, a lot of other advantages. For example, they are going to generate massive employment for our teeming youths. We are going to task them on the auspices of their corporate social responsibility to build roads, even across the state. Because right now, we don't even have the road. The infrastructures are very, very, they are very dysfunctional, And other than that, they can provide electricity because they are going to generate their off-grid power to power all these, services. So it's a win-win. It will be a win-win situation for not only those states, but even the foreign investors that will come in, to bring the investment and money to Ondo State. All
right. I've been speaking with Brigadier General Olamide Felix Ohunyeye. It was important for me to pronounce that correctly. So Ondo State has had its fair share of climate change-induced disaster. I mean, as we speak, Ayetoro Town is being submerged by the Atlantic. What is your plan to fix that?
Thank you very much on the issue of climate change. Well, I want to tell you that climate change is not peculiar to Ondo State. If you recall, in the last 2, 3, 4 years, we had incidences across the nation. And these incidences are occasioned by, global climate change, which presumably are caused by, changing weather conditions, global warming, And we have seen the effects in ozone surges. We have seen the effect in massive flooding and displacements. We have seen the effect in even complete eradication of communities. And luckily, you have mentioned Ayetoro. Yes, Ayetoro, if you recall, is an autonomous and indigenous, community within Ondo State. I remember when I was young, we used to hear stories that Ayetoro, can boast of practically all infrastructures. Light is 24 hours. People live a communal life. There is peace, security within the area, and all of that. But regrettably, and rather very unfortunately, in the last 10 years, the effect of the Atlantic Ocean surge had almost completely wiped off the entire community. I know that there have been some initiatives, but I believe not much positive impacts have been achieved. So how can what strategies can we adopt to solve this problem, not only with the Ayetoro and even in Akure, in Akure, the capital of the Sunshine State. In Ayetoro, it's going to be a very big project. It's not similar to what we had in Babish in Lagos, when there was encroachment to the entire Ikoyi. If you look at the solution that we had in Babish, what simply happened there was that there was massive embankments, in terms of massive stones, in layers being placed within the shoreline to prevent the encroachment. And I think that worked perfectly. But in the case of Ayetoro, that would be extremely, very, very difficult. So as a partner care to solve this problem, I will look at least a tripartite solution that will start from the federal government. Lucky enough, we have the Ministry of environment to handle this. We have the ecological fund that could help in reducing, ameliorating the effect of this devastating surges. Then Ondo State, in partnership with NDDC, can form an alliance. And I recall that there have been various partnership and innovative arrangements in the past years that were conceived to manage the problem in Ayetoro. But I think those processes were not properly managed, and the problem still remains unabated. And I also recall that the previous government of Olusegun Agagu, of blessed memory, conceived of having, a town, an alternative town within Ayetoro there, because if you look at the entire land space, especially within the SLW local government, there are vast land resources right from Ondo that moves across to Benin. So possibility of relocation of Ayetoro is there. But of course, you have to balance this against, the people, because they might not be willing to leave their traditional society. So what this means is that it is very, very imperative and very compelling that the government, through all this tripartite arrangement, come up with, a very potent, effective, and lasting solutions to stopping the problem of Ayetoro. Having said that, let's quickly take a look at what is happening, even within and across Ondo State, starting with, Akure, the state capital. Now, the Ala River in Akure perennially has been creating a lot of devastating effects through its annual floodings, within the town. And this equally happens in so many other towns. The Odigbo local government is there, Okitupa is there, and a whole lot of other local governments, across the state. So what do we do for all this urban, erosion menace? We will have to take a look at the blueprint of the urban and regional, development within these areas. We must have to look at the channelizations. Are the channels correctly done? If they are not, do we change the channel? If we confirm that, we will look at refuse dumping patterns. How the waste management, how is it controlled? Do we dump all our plastics into these rivers? What plastic control measures do we have, in line with global best practices of trying to eradicate the use of plastics in food packaging? And then so many other, education and, educative, methods that we have to deploy to let the people, to warn the people about the implications of, unhealthy, climate, issues within the state. So I think that there are lots to be done in areas of physical planning, urban renewal policies, channelization, waste management. And this we're going to pursue very vigorously to ensure that we not only ensure that the people are safe.
Brigadier, let me also take you up on this dream of having deep sea ports in Ondo State, because according to research, the deepest point of the Atlantic in Nigeria is in Araromi in Ondo State. How do you intend to work to ensure that this dream becomes a reality?
Thank you very much. I'm aware that currently a port has been approved for Ondo State. And, please excuse me, hold on. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Please go ahead. Brigadier, can you hear me?
Anyway, let me continue if you can hear me.
Yes,
recently,
I can.
I'm aware that Ondo Port has been approved. And if the approval is on ground, then what remains is a functional blueprint that we have to, apply for its operationalization. And I'm aware that Ondo State may not have the required funding to build a deep sea port. But like I earlier said in my introduction, there are several avenues and models that can be adopted or applied to ensure that we build a deep sea port. One of those is to get major strategic investors. If we can get one, that would be perfect. If we cannot, we can syndicate investments with about 2-3, notable companies. And we can even appeal to, financiers within the nation that had the money to build, a deep sea port. And this, in a short while, just like we saw the deep port in Lekki, being built and operationalized, we can achieve that in Ondo State. But the bottom line and the imperative of this is that while that seaport is built, especially you mentioned the Araromi seaside, which is known to be very deep, that is not the only deep area within the coastline of Ondo State. Igbekwe actually had a very deep side there. And within Ondo State, we could have even 2 deep sea ports, one at the Araromi end, which is closer to Ogun State, and one at the Igbokoda, that's Eseodo side. We could have, and these ports will combine to share resources and facilities, and it will be easy for Ondo State to task the ports. Of course, we don't have to task the ports to build roads. Once there is a port, we know that it is very important and necessary that the port will have to ensure that there is quality road that will transport their goods right from that axis to Ore, to the north, to the south, and even, to Akure. And at that level, I'm sure we'll be looking at multimedia, models for road construction. You are looking at dualizing the roads. You are looking at probably having, rail lines for mass haulage, while at the same time you are looking at, the coastal line, which have been the drawing board in about 10 years but had not materialized. And that coastal line, that's road, was scheduled to link Araromi side, that's, Igbokoda, to Lekki, and specifically to Akodo. So with all these facilities being on ground within that locality, you are 100% sure that, we can actualize these dreams. And Ondo State, in no time, can become Dubai. Ondo State, in no time, we become the hub of the blue economy. And luckily, our visionary president, the pragmatic leader, has set up the Ministry of Blue Economy. And if you look at the activities of this economy, which will be blending aquatic resources, aquatic life, with even agro-allied resources, Ondo State is the best fit to be the pioneer or the focal point of actualizing the dreams of this, of this ministry. So these are very huge potentials that should excite all citizens of Ondo State, towards seeing my team as the next governor of the state without necessarily campaigning. All
right. Now let's turn our attention to education. What would you do to improve the quality and quantity of education in Ondo State, especially basic education? Brigadier, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now, clearly.
All right, so I wanted to know what your plans are for education in Ondo State. What would you do to improve the quality of education in that state, especially basic education?
Thank you. A knowledge-based state economy is that is efficiently prepared, for the next level. So it's almost an imperative for every right-thinking government, to invest massively in education. Now, the regrettable aspect of this story is that when we used to be young, I remember in those days, Ondo Ekiti is known to be education, and education is synonymous with Ondo State. And then when you look at rankings of educational performances among Nigerian states, of course, you are sure you're going to see Ondo Ekiti occupying topmost second position. But it was sad that about a month ago, when I look at the current rankings of education, by whatever criteria, I saw that Ondo State could not be found within the first top 10. of the ladder. And it is very, very disturbing. What does this mean? This means that fundamentally there are issues within the entire gamut and the value chain of the educational system within the state. If you start from the primary level, the primary schools, move to the secondary and tertiary levels. What about the infrastructures? Are the infrastructures more robust? Are they up to date to support current learners? Those are issues that are begging, for answers. Just last week, in one of the consultations with the local government, there was one pathetic story, a question that somebody asked. And the question was that one of the schools in that locality, in the 60s or 70s, had numerous teachers and infrastructures, and that they were able to produce a pupil that later became the vice chancellor of University of Benin. But as of today, the status is that the school basically cannot boast of more than 3 teachers. And they had to augment with, auxiliary teachers to teach. So if this is the case, of course, it's quite discernible at a go that we have problem with the staffing, the human resource and the staffing of that schools. Those 3 teachers, what is their level of training? What is their workload? What is the student-teachers ratio in these schools? Is there any possibility that they will be monitored? Of course, there's no need because the teachers are overworked. Now, the infrastructures in the school, the buildings, are they conducive enough? Do we have adequate chairs for the pupils to sit? These are begging. These are various areas that we have to completely review and produce immediate blueprints. Are we going to employ teachers? The teachers we're employing, are they based on political patronage or based on the actual need of the schools? Do they have the right qualifications? And then when you talk about the training, what training facilities do they have in the school? Are they adding ingredients of technology for their training? Do they have computer labs that can boast of laptops that we have in some schools? For example, in Oshun, within that locality. So these are germane issues and a lot of other issues that we have to x-ray, within the entire value chain of the learning and the teaching process.
All right, Brigadier.
And we have to even go to the backward.
Brigadier, sadly we have to go. I mean, it's sad that we couldn't cover the entire stretch of our conversation for tonight. But, from our conversation tonight, it seems you have good plans, good policies in place for the people of Ondo State. And we can only wish you the very best from here. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I've been speaking with Brigadier General Olamide Felix Ohunyeye, retired. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Jumofe, for the difficult questions. And I hope that I've been able to satisfy you and the people of Ondo State and convince them that I'm fit, qualified, I'm poised, determined, and I'm comprehensively prepared, to turn things around within Ondo State if I'm given the privilege. Thank you very much.